My name is Elena Martinez. I'm 26 years old, and I will never forget the night everything changed. It began with the velvet box on a polished mahogany table and a single sentence spoken with enough disdain to slice through the air. "This is your dowry? A watch?" Richard Hale, my almost father-in-law, held the box between two fingers as if I had brought him something contaminated. He pushed it back across the table, the scrape echoing in the silent dining room. "My son deserves someone who brings real value into this family. Maybe you should reconsider whether you're ready for this marriage." My fiancé, James, sat beside me, staring at his plate like it was the most interesting thing in the world. He didn't squeeze my hand, didn't defend me, didn't even flinch, not one word. My heart sank so fast, it felt like the room tilted. What made the moment worse was that the watch wasn't just an accessory. It had been my grandfather's, a vintage, well-kept piece he'd worn for 40 years while raising my father and building a life from nothing. Giving it to James's family felt like offering a piece of my history. But to them, I was just the nurse, the girl from a modest background who didn't belong in their world of country clubs, private jets, and multi-million-dollar business deals. I work as a pediatric nurse at St. Mark's Children's Hospital. My days are filled with comforting terrified parents, singing to toddlers during injections, and holding tiny hands through pain I wish I could take away from them. I love my job. It gives me meaning, purpose, a sense of worth that has nothing to do with money. But the Hales didn't see that. They saw someone who drove a Honda Civic and lived in a small apartment. Someone without a portfolio, a trust fund, or a powerful family name. They looked at me and saw less. When James and I met 8 months ago at a charity fundraiser for childhood cancer, he seemed different from the people around him. Humble, gentle, interested in my work. I didn't know then how deeply his family's approval controlled him. For the formal introduction dinner, I spent hours picking the right outfit. A simple beige dress, elegant but modest. I rehearsed polite answers in my head, wanting to show them respect. When Patricia, his mother, greeted me, she barely masked her disinterest. "Oh, you're the nurse." As if I told her I cleaned sewers. How noble. Then at the table, Richard immediately began firing off questions. "Tell us about your family's business ventures, investments, property." When I said I didn't have any, that I was saving, and most of my spare money went to charity work with my father, his eyebrows shot up. "What exactly are you bringing to this marriage financially?" That was the moment the watch came out. That was the moment he laughed. That was the moment I realized I didn't just not belong, I wasn't welcome. The next week, James invited me to a cafe. He didn't order for me like he usually did, didn't sit close. He slid a stack of papers across the table. A prenup. Not a normal, fair prenup. No. This one stripped me of any rights. If the marriage ended, I would leave with nothing. Any future children's inheritance would be controlled by his parents. I would have no access to any family assets. "It protects both of us," James said weakly, unable to meet my eyes. "You showed this to your parents, didn't you?" I asked. He didn't deny it. "My dad said you'd be difficult about it." Difficult? That word tasted bitter. I walked out of the cafe with my chest tight, the weight of reality sinking in. The man I loved was no longer standing beside me. He was standing behind his parents, letting them pull the strings. Things only got worse. James's sister had an engagement party I wasn't invited to. "You can come as my +1, but not as my fiancé." At the party, I overheard Richard telling his golf buddies, "James is keeping his options open. Smart boy." Patricia added to her wine club friends, "We're hoping he finds someone more fitting, someone who understands our world. When I confronted James, he brushed it off. They'll warm up eventually, just give them time. But the truth was, they didn't want to warm up. They wanted me gone. 3 days later, I received a call that made my stomach drop. "Elena, this is Richard," he said, voice clipped and cold. "I'd like to offer you $50,000 to walk away quietly. That's more than you make in 2 years. Be smart. Find someone in your station." My hands shook as I hit record on my phone. "Does James know about this?" I asked. "James wants what's best for everyone," he replied. When I brought it up to James that night, he simply said, "They're trying to protect me. Don't overreact." The way my chest burned at his words, I will never forget that feeling. That creeping realization that he would never choose me over them. But there was one thing the Hales didn't know, something I had never revealed, not even to James. My father wasn't a traveling salesman. He wasn't some ordinary middle-class man hopping from place to place. My father was Michael Torres, managing director of Azure Capital, the investment firm holding majority stakes in 12 major companies, including Premier Automotive Group, the Hales' entire business empire. I used my mother's maiden name, Martinez, because I wanted to build my life on my own merit. I never wanted people treating me differently because of who my dad was. My father respected that. He stayed in the background. But when he called from Singapore and asked how the wedding planning was going, I broke. "It's complicated," I told him. "Then I'll fly in. We'll talk." For the first time, I told him everything. Every insult, every humiliation, every time James had stood silently while his parents crushed my dignity. 2 days before the dinner I arranged, Richard sent a cease and desist letter accusing me of harassing James and demanding that I accept the buyout or face legal consequences. Their desperation was stunning. The night of the meeting, I wore a navy blue dress that Maria, my best friend, said I looked like the woman who wins. My father arrived straight from the airport, tired but protective. We booked a private dining room at the Ritz. When the Hales walked in, Richard's arrogance filled the whole space. "So you're the traveling father," he said, dismissively. My father stood, extended his hand, and said calmly, "Michael Torres, Azure Capital." Patricia dropped her purse. James blinked like he'd been punched. Richard went still, then pale. My father continued, "We hold your company's primary business loan. Renewal is next month." You could hear a pin drop. I pressed play on my phone. Richard's recorded voice filled the room. $50,000 to walk away quietly. Patricia gasped. James sank into his chair. "You tried to pay off my daughter?" my father asked softly. "You treated her like she was beneath you?" Richard stuttered. "That's out of context." "No," I said, standing. "The context is that you humiliated me, dismissed me, judged me, and convinced your son to do the same." James finally looked at me. "Elena, please, we can fix this." I removed the engagement ring and placed it in front of him. "We're done. Your family didn't break us. Your silence did." We left the room. My father put an arm around me. "You deserved better long before tonight. I'm proud of you." 1 month later, Premier Automotive Group's loan was renewed, but with strict oversight and zero flexibility. Not revenge, just accountability. James sent messages after message begging for another chance, promising to stand up for me now. I blocked him on everything. I went back to my work, my real purpose, saving children, comforting families, making a difference. I eventually started dating again, a gentle, genuine teacher who brought me lunch during my shifts and never once asked about my father's career. 2 months later, I saw Patricia at a charity gala. She couldn't meet my eyes. People whispered that James was now engaged to Jessica, the woman Richard approved of. But their business? Struggling under the new oversight. Their arrogance cost them dearly. My peace, on the other hand, was priceless. I learned that worth has nothing to do with money and everything to do with integrity. If you've ever been underestimated or humiliated by people who thought they were above you, hear this. Your value is not determined by their standards. It is determined by your character, your kindness, and the way you rise again when someone tries to break you. That is my story, and if you've ever stood up to betrayal, I hope it reminds you of your strength.